How many people can actually jump out of bed the moment their alarm goes off in the morning? And how many can just fall asleep on cue exactly when it's time for bed? Strangely, a lot of us don't really feel awake until the afternoon or late at night, rather than in the morning. Sometimes that alertness carries on into the early hours, leaving us tossing and turning, as if our bodies were actively resisting sleep. We see people who get up early and make the most of their mornings and think, I'll start doing that tomorrow. But most of the time, that resolution only lasts a few days. Is it really because we're less disciplined or just lazier than they are? In 1965, German physiologist Jürgen Aschoff at the Max Planck Institute conducted a fascinating experiment. He recruited volunteers and had them live in an underground bunker for about a month. The bunker was completely cut off from the outside world, so the participants had no clue what day or what time it was. Yet surprisingly, they began to sleep and go about their daily routines in remarkably regular cycles, even though they had no external time cues at all. This showed that the human body has an internal biological clock built into it. Within a tiny region of the hypothalamus called the Suprachiasmatic Nucleus, tens of thousands of neurons carry clock genes, such as period and clock. These genes produce proteins that send signals to various parts of the brain, controlling our cycles of activity and rest. It's pretty amazing that tiny changes in these proteins can govern the behavior of an organism as large as a human being. But in the bunker experiment, scientists noticed something very unusual. The internal clock wasn't running on a 24-hour schedule, but closer to 25 hours. What happens if our internal clock runs on a longer cycle than the actual day? We end up experiencing the equivalent of a 1-hour time difference every single day. It's like constantly flying to a country in a different time zone and having to deal with jet lag and readjust to it every day. Those awful Monday blues we get every week are also caused by this mismatch between our internal clock and the 24-hour day, made even worse by our late nights on Friday and Saturday. According to studies, more than 60% of the population has an internal clock that naturally runs closer to 25 hours. Even though getting up in the morning is hard, especially on Mondays, most of us still manage to stick to a normal work schedule. That's because our bodies can use information from the surrounding environment to reset a drifting internal clock. Scientists call these environmental cues Zeitgebers, a German word that means time givers. The most powerful Zeitgeber is light. Each day, the light of the rising sun resets our internal clock, which has drifted out of sync overnight, back to zero. So, if we live in an environment where we don't get much light, it's very easy for us to slip into being night owls. However, despite this self-reset ability, it turns out that the younger we are, the more strongly we are shaped by our internal clock. According to research by Professor Simon Archer at the University of Surrey, people with a shorter version of a gene called PER3 tend to fall asleep and wake up earlier, while those with a longer version tend to go to bed and get up later. In other words, whether we're morning people or night owls isn't just about laziness or willpower. Our genes play a major role, and as a result, each of us carries a slightly different internal clock. By contrast, society runs on a social clock of its own. The gap between the social clock and our internal clock, that jet lag between the two, is what really lies at the root of the problem. Of course, that doesn't mean the social clock is somehow wrong. Agreed upon social time has allowed us as social animals to connect with one another, protect each other, and build societies that helped us survive and grow. So whether we're morning people or night owls, we've had to adapt to social time in order to survive in human society. If we couldn't adapt, we couldn't survive, at least until now. But maybe that won't always be the case. As technology advances, every society and every time zone is being woven together into a single, continuous network. A world that once seemed to run only in the daytime and come to a halt at night has begun to turn without ever stopping. Or rather, it was never really stopping in the first place. The Earth is constantly spinning, endlessly orbiting the sun, and the universe itself is endlessly expanding. As we slowly step outside the illusion of time, we're beginning to realize something. What matters is not when we close our eyes and dream, but what we dream of while our eyes are open.